The front desk agent glanced at the screen, then looked up with a polite smile that didn't quite hide her hesitation. "Good afternoon," she began carefully. "For the Vale family booking, there are 3 VIP suites remaining." She tapped the keyboard once more. "And 1 standard room." For a moment, nobody spoke. Then my father turned toward me. Harold Vale had always been good at making decisions for other people. He studied the room list in the agent's hand, then gave a small shrug. "Well," he said casually, gesturing toward me, "Elena probably won't mind the standard room." A few of my cousins chuckled, not loudly, just the kind of quiet laughter people use when something feels socially convenient. Vanessa leaned over the counter to glance at the screen. 3 VIP suites, she asked the agent. "Ocean view." "Yes, ma'am." "Perfect," Vanessa replied. "Those should go to the families." She turned back toward me with a sympathetic smile that wasn't really sympathetic at all. "You're okay with the standard room?" "Right?" Carter laughed lightly behind her. "Elena's always been practical," someone else added, "and she's single anyway." More soft laughter. I looked past them toward the tall windows of the lobby. Beyond the glass, the Caribbean water stretched out in impossible shades of blue, the kind of view people travel thousands of miles to see. The front desk agent hesitated before sliding the keycard across the counter. "Room 108, she said quietly. "Garden view. Standard." I picked up the card. "Thank you," I replied calmly. "If you're wondering why I didn't correct them right there in the lobby, there's something you should understand first. My name is Elena Vale. I'm 36 years old, and 5 days before my family reunion at Azure Crest Resort, I had quietly purchased the entire resort chain. Before this story goes any further, one small note: the events you're about to hear are presented as a narrative created by the Revenge AITA channel, meant to explore lessons about respect, assumptions, and family dynamics. The characters and situations are part of a fictionalized story designed to inspire reflection, not to portray any real individuals." Back in the lobby, my father clapped Carter on the shoulder and laughed again. "See?" he said. "Problem solved." I slipped the keycard into my pocket, because at that moment, no one in my family realized whose resort they had just checked into, and none of them had the slightest idea what was about to happen next. So tell me something. If your own family decided you deserved the worst room in a place you secretly owned, what would you do next? The lobby of Azure Crest Resort was designed to impress people the moment they stepped inside. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls framed the ocean like a living painting. Sunlight spilled across polished marble floors. A sculptural chandelier of blue crystal hung above the reception desk, catching the light like fragments of the Caribbean sky. My family slowed down the moment they stepped through the doors. "Wow," Vanessa breathed. She turned slowly, taking in the infinity pools cascading toward the beach. "I can't believe we found this place." Carter gave a low whistle. "Look at that terrace," he said, pointing toward the outdoor bar where white umbrellas shaded guests sipping cocktails beside the water. My father stood near the center of the lobby with his hands on his hips, studying the architecture like a man evaluating a business opportunity. "This," Harold declared, gesturing broadly toward the resort grounds, "is how a successful property should be run." Vanessa nodded eagerly. "The design alone must cost a fortune." "Smart investment," Carter added. "Luxury like this attracts the right crowd." My father gave a satisfied grin. "Exactly. Whoever owns this place clearly understands business." Behind them, vacationing guests crossed the lobby toward the beach, pulling suitcases across the marble floor while the distant sound of waves drifted through the open terraces. Vanessa pulled out her phone. "I'm posting this," she said. "People are going to be jealous." She angled the camera toward the ocean. "Best family reunion location ever." More relatives wandered toward the glass railing overlooking the water, admiring the long private pier and the yachts anchored offshore. I stayed near the back of the lobby, watching them explore. listening, observing the way they spoke about the resort as if they had discovered something rare and exclusive. 5 days earlier, the acquisition paperwork had been finalized. The bank transfers cleared that same afternoon. Azure Crest Resort, along with 10 other properties across the Caribbean, had quietly become part of my portfolio. None of them knew. Not yet. Vanessa spun around again, smiling at the view. "This place is unbelievable," she said. My father nodded approvingly. Someone with real vision built it. I leaned lightly against one of the marble columns and looked out toward the ocean. Because the strange thing was, they weren't wrong. They were just praising the wrong person, and standing there in the middle of the lobby, listening to them admire every detail, I realized something ironic. They were praising the resort I had just bought. The front desk area grew busier as more relatives arrived from the airport shuttle. Suitcases rolled across the marble floor. Conversations overlapped. Someone was already asking where the pool bar was. Vanessa stepped forward like someone who had quietly taken charge of the reunion logistics hours earlier. She unfolded the printed reservation sheet she'd been carrying since the airport. "Okay, everyone," she announced. "Let's sort out the rooms." The front desk agent handed her the updated assignments. Vanessa scanned the list. Perfect. 3 VIP suites. Her smile widened. These should go to the families. She pointed to the names. Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda Suite 1. Carter and Jessica Suite 2. Jessica immediately lifted her phone. Recording. "Guys, this place is insane," she said to her followers. "Look at these suites." Vanessa continued reading. "And the last room." Her voice paused briefly before she glanced toward me. "Elena gets the standard room." Carter leaned casually against the counter. "Well," he said with a shrug, "that actually makes sense." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" He nodded in my direction. "She's always preferred simpler things." Jessica laughed while still filming. "That's true. Elena's never been into flashy stuff." Vanessa gave a small smile that tried to sound thoughtful. "Besides," she added gently, "the VIP suites are really designed for couples." Her eyes flicked toward me again. "You won't mind the standard room." Right before I could answer, my father spoke. Harold glanced over the list once more, then gave the front desk agent a small nod. "The standard room suits her." A few cousins chuckled. Someone quietly said, "Yeah, that seems fair." Jessica's phone was still pointed toward the counter as she laughed softly. "Room drama at the reunion," she whispered to the camera. The front desk agent slid a key card across the marble. "Room 108. I picked it up without arguing. No explanation. No correction. Just the quiet sound of plastic against polished stone. Because sometimes the most revealing moments aren't the ones where people argue. They're the ones where people calmly show you exactly what they think you deserve. I turned the keycard over in my hand. Stamped across the front in silver letters were 3 simple words. Room 108, Standard Garden View. The North Tower elevators opened onto a hallway filled with ocean light. Glass walls ran along one side of the corridor, revealing the Caribbean stretching endlessly beyond the resort grounds. Vanessa stepped out first. "Okay," she said, glancing around. "This must be the VIP floor." Carter followed behind her, rolling his suitcase across the carpet. Jessica was still filming. "Guys, look at this hallway," she said to her phone. "Ocean view on both sides." Vanessa swiped the first key card. The door opened. Inside, the suite spread wide with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the sea. A curved balcony wrapped around the living space. Sunlight spilled across marble counters and soft leather furniture. Jessica gasped. "Okay, this is actually amazing." Carter stepped onto the balcony and leaned over the railing. "Infinity pool down there," he called. "And look at the beach." Vanessa slowly walked through the suite, examining the room carefully. Then her expression changed. "Wait." She stepped back toward the doorway and looked again at the room number. This isn't the corner suite. Carter frowned. What do you mean? Vanessa flipped through the printed booking sheet again. The corner suites face both sides of the ocean. Jessica lowered her phone slightly. So this isn't the best one? Vanessa shook her head. No, the corner units are bigger. Carter walked back inside, scanning the room more critically now. Yeah, the balcony is smaller than the photos. Jessica frowned. The listing showed a bigger terrace. My father stepped out onto the balcony and looked toward the beach below. It's still a good suite, he admitted. Then he turned back with a thoughtful frown. But if better units were available, we should have gotten those. Vanessa nodded immediately. Exactly. She turned toward the elevator. We should talk to the front desk. Jessica lifted her phone again. This might actually make good content. Carter laughed. Customer complaint vlog. Vanessa pressed the elevator button. If a resort calls itself luxury, she muttered, it should deliver luxury. Behind them. I stepped quietly back into the hallway, because the strange part wasn't that they were about to complain. Guests complained at luxury resorts all the time. The strange part was this. They were about to complain about a resort. That belonged to me. And downstairs in the lobby, the front desk agent had already picked up the phone. I'll contact the regional director, she told Vanessa, and in less than 3 minutes, the person responsible for running this entire property was about to walk into the lobby. The lobby was louder when we came back downstairs. 15 members of my family crowded around the front desk, speaking over one another while the receptionist tried to maintain her professional smile. Vanessa leaned across the counter again. We were told these were VIP suites, she said. But they're not the corner suites. Jessica still had her phone out. Customer service review, she whispered quietly to her camera. Carter crossed his arms. If this is your idea of luxury, he added, you might want to rethink your advertising. My father stepped forward next. He rested both hands on the marble counter in the confident way of someone used to being taken seriously. We'd like to speak with whoever manages this property. The receptionist nodded politely. The regional director is on his way. Sir. That sentence changed the mood immediately. Vanessa smoothed her hair. Jessica lowered her phone slightly. Carter straightened his shirt. My father adjusted his jacket like a man preparing for a business conversation. Good, he muttered. Someone who can actually fix things. A moment later, the doors behind the reception desk opened. A tall man in a dark suit stepped out from the executive hallway. His posture was calm and composed, the kind of quiet authority that made people lower their voices without being asked. Adrian Cross, Regional Director of Azure Crest Resort. He approached the front desk while the receptionist quietly explained the situation. My father immediately extended his hand. Finally, he said, we were hoping to speak with someone in charge. Adrian acknowledged him with a polite nod. Good afternoon, sir. But his attention shifted almost immediately past the group, past Vanessa, past Carter, past the cluster of irritated relatives filling the lobby. His gaze stopped on me. He stepped forward and inclined his head slightly. Good afternoon, Ms. Vale. The lobby fell noticeably quieter. Vanessa blinked. Carter frowned. My father slowly lowered his hand. Adrian's voice remained calm and professional. I hope everything has been satisfactory so far. Every pair of eyes in my family turned toward me. Adrian waited politely. Then he asked the question that changed the entire moment. Would you like me to correct the room assignments? Ma'am. For a moment, nobody in my family moved. Adrian stood beside the front desk with the quiet patience of someone who already understood the situation. Vanessa frowned first. Wait, she said slowly, glancing between us. Why are you asking her? Carter looked just as confused. She's not the one who made the booking. Jessica slowly lowered her phone, her live stream forgotten for the first time since we arrived. My father cleared his throat. You must have misunderstood something, he said to Adrian, gesturing toward the reservation sheet. My daughter isn't organizing this reunion. Adrian remained calm. I'm aware of that, sir. Harold frowned slightly. Then why are you asking her about the room assignments? The regional director looked at him politely. Because Ms. Vale has final authority over room assignments at this property. A brief silence followed. Then Carter gave a small laugh. Right, he said. Meaning she works here or something. Vanessa nodded quickly. That must be it. Maybe she's part of management. Jessica raised her phone again. Curious now. So you're like, staff here. Adrian turned the tablet in his hand so the screen faced the group. No. His voice stayed calm. Ms. Elena Vale is the owner of Azure Crest Resort. The sentence landed in the middle of the lobby like something heavy dropped onto marble. No one spoke. Vanessa's mouth opened slightly. Jessica's phone slipped lower in her hand. Carter stared at me as if trying to decide whether this was some kind of elaborate joke. My father blinked once. Owner, he repeated slowly. Adrian nodded. She completed the acquisition of Azure Crest Resort and the Sapphire Coast portfolio 5 days ago. The lobby had gone completely quiet. Guests walking through the entrance slowed slightly, sensing something unusual unfolding. Vanessa's clipboard slipped from her fingers and hit the floor. Jessica stopped recording entirely. Carter's confident expression disappeared. My father looked at me again, really looked this time, and for the first time since we had stepped into the resort. Harold Vale didn't seem to have a single word left to say. For several seconds, no one in my family moved. The lobby felt different now, quieter, heavier. Vanessa was the first to speak, though the confidence from earlier had completely vanished. That can't be right, she said, glancing nervously between Adrian and me. Carter gave a short laugh that sounded forced. Yeah, he added. There's no way Elena owns this place. Adrian didn't react. He simply turned the tablet slightly so the screen faced them. Displayed across the document was the acquisition confirmation. Property Azure Crest Resort owner Elena Vale. Vanessa stared at the screen. Jessica leaned forward slowly, reading the name again. Carter's shoulders stiffened. My father said nothing. I stepped a little closer to the counter. I finalized the purchase last week, I said calmly. Azure Crest, and 10 other properties along the Caribbean coast. Jessica blinked. You mean, this whole resort group? Yes. The lobby remained silent. Vanessa ran a hand slowly through her hair. But you never told us, she murmured. I looked at her. You never asked. Carter shifted uncomfortably. Well, we didn't know. That's true. I replied. You didn't. But ignorance hadn't really been the problem, because 5 minutes earlier, none of them had cared to know anything about me before deciding what kind of room I deserved. Vanessa glanced down at the assignment sheet still lying on the counter. Her voice dropped. So, when we gave you the standard room, I nodded once. Yes. Jessica swallowed. You were the owner. The reality of the situation settled slowly across the group. The comments in the elevator, the complaints about the suites, the casual jokes about what kind of room suited me. All of it had happened inside a resort I now controlled. I turned my attention toward my father. You said something a few minutes ago. I reminded him quietly. Harold finally lifted his eyes. I repeated his words carefully. You said the standard room suited me. No one laughed this time. Not Vanessa, not Carter. Not even Jessica with her phone. The entire lobby suddenly found the marble floor very interesting, and Adrian stood patiently beside me, waiting for the only decision that now mattered. Adrian stood beside the front desk, his tablet resting calmly in his hands. The entire lobby seemed to be holding its breath. My family looked at me differently now, not with the casual superiority they had walked in with, but with a new and uneasy awareness. Vanessa spoke first. Elena. We didn't realize I know. I interrupted gently. You didn't. Carter shifted his weight. So, what happens now? He asked. Adrian answered before I could. That depends entirely on Ms. Vale. He turned slightly toward the group, his tone calm and professional. As the property owner, she has full authority over all booking arrangements. Vanessa blinked. You mean, the room assignments among other things, Adrian replied. Jessica slowly slipped her phone into her purse. What other things Adrian's expression didn't change? For example, he said calmly, the owner can adjust room categories, relocate guests, or cancel group reservations if necessary. That sentence landed like a small shockwave. Vanessa's face paled. Cancel, she repeated. Carter stared at Adrian. You mean our entire booking? Yes. Adrian's voice remained smooth and factual. A group reservation is always subject to property approval. My father finally spoke again, his voice much quieter than it had been earlier. Elena, he said carefully, we're here for the family reunion. I met his gaze. I'm aware of that. Vanessa stepped forward slightly. We weren't trying to insult you, she said quickly. The room thing was just logistics. Jessica nodded. Yeah, it wasn't personal. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I glanced around the lobby. Guests passed through the entrance, unaware that the balance of power inside one family had just shifted completely in the middle of the reception area. A few minutes earlier, they had been deciding which room suited me. Now they were waiting to see whether they still had rooms at all. Adrian turned back to me politely. Would you like us to make any adjustments to the booking? Ms. Vale. 40 relatives stood in front of the desk, silent, waiting. And for the first time since we arrived, everyone in my family understood something important. They had never been the ones in control of this situation, not even for a moment. The lobby had never felt this quiet before. A few minutes earlier, my family had been talking over one another, arguing about balconies and ocean views. Now, 40 people stood in front of the reception desk without saying a word. Vanessa looked like she was trying to recalculate the situation in her head. Elena, she began carefully. We really didn't mean it's fine, I said. But the truth was more complicated than that. Because, technically, Adrian had just explained exactly what I could do. I could downgrade the suites. I could move everyone to standard rooms. Or I could cancel the reservation entirely and let the reunion continue somewhere else. Carter cleared his throat. So, what happens now? Adrian didn't answer. He simply waited. My father stepped forward slowly. The confident tone he had carried earlier was gone. Elena, Harold said quietly. We came here as a family. I held his gaze. Yes. Vanessa nodded quickly. And we want the reunion to stay that way. Jessica added softly. We really are sorry about the room thing. For the first time since the reveal, no one looked defensive, just uncomfortable, embarrassed. I leaned lightly against the marble counter and thought about the last 20 minutes. The laughter, the casual assumptions, the certainty with which they had decided what kind of room suited me. Adrian spoke again. If you'd like, he said calmly, we can begin adjusting the reservations now. 40 relatives waited for my answer. Vanessa looked anxious. Carter avoided eye contact. My father remained silent. In that moment, I realized something simple. Revenge would have been very easy. All it would take was one sentence. But power doesn't always come from using authority. Sometimes it comes from deciding how not to use it. I straightened slightly and looked at Adrian. I've made my decision, I said. Behind me, the ocean glittered through the lobby windows. My family held their breath, because they were about to find out exactly what kind of choice I was going to make. I'm not canceling the reservation, I said. The tension in the lobby loosened immediately. Vanessa exhaled first. Carter's shoulders dropped. Jessica let out a small, relieved laugh. But Adrian didn't move. He was still waiting for the rest of the instructions, and the suites he asked. I looked at the group standing in front of the reception desk. A few minutes earlier, they had been laughing about what kind of room suited me. Now they were standing quietly, hoping I would be generous. Let them keep the VIP rooms, I said. Vanessa blinked. Really? Yes. Adrian nodded once and made a note on his tablet. The current suite assignments will remain unchanged. The atmosphere in the lobby shifted again, this time toward relief. But I wasn't finished. There is one adjustment, I added. Adrian looked up. Yes, Ms. Vale, I'll be moving to the presidential villa. For a moment. Nobody spoke. Vanessa frowned slightly. The presidential... What? Adrian answered calmly. The private villa at the end of the North Tower. He explained. Oceanfront, Infinity Terrace, and private concierge service. Jessica's eyes widened. That suite costs like $12,000 a night. I nodded. That sounds about right. Adrian gave a small professional smile. I'll have your belongings transferred immediately. Thank you. My father watched the exchange quietly before stepping closer. Elena, he said, we should have treated you better. I met his eyes. Yes, I replied. You should have. No anger. Just the truth. Later that evening, I stood on the balcony of the presidential villa, looking out across the resort lights reflecting on the Caribbean water. Somewhere in the North Tower, my family was settling into the suites they had been so eager to claim earlier. But the strange thing was, none of that mattered as much anymore, because something had changed today. Not the resort, not the rooms, just the way people finally chose to see me. Sometimes the room people think you deserve says far more about them than it ever will about you. If this story reminded you of a moment when someone underestimated you, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy stories like this about family dynamics, respect, and unexpected reversals, consider liking the video and subscribing so you don't miss the next one.